Quentin, Grafton, you've done economic modelling on what these cuts could mean to rural communities. What were the findings?
Well, we can talk about the guide document that was released yesterday, and they talk about 1,200 permanent job losses associated with a 4,000 gigalitres reduction in surface water extraction. So that's pretty minimal. I've done modelling myself. I find some numbers a little larger than that. But overall, the impact in the basin is moderate. That doesn't mean, however, that there aren't going to be impacts in particular communities, and I think they can be managed and they can be mitigated if we do it intelligently. If we spend the money that's on the table, and there's $8.9 billion on the table from the Commonwealth. If we spend that wisely, we can mitigate those potential losses. We can actually get the water we need for the environment, and we can actually compensate the irrigators. So it seems to me we've got a real set of options in front of us. We can move ahead. We can get a win-win-win.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I just want to take you back a little bit. So how many jobs did you foresee would be lost?
Look, there's different models and different results in terms of the assumptions you make, but I was looking at something, 7,000 to 9,000 jobs, but those would be gross job losses in terms of irrigated agriculture and the processing sector. What the modelling done by the authority has looked at is not just the irrigated agriculture sector, they've looked at the whole jobs, not just in agriculture, and they've looked at also the flow-on effects of putting billions of dollars into the basin when you buy back water entitlements. And presumably when they've done their models, they've been able to say that there's going to be increased jobs someplace else, and they offset some of those losses. That's presumably how they've done it.
Okay, communities in the area are already saying that these cuts are far too drastic, and I have to say 9,000 jobs does sound like a very large figure.
Well, but it does sound large, and it's easy for me to sit here and say that it's that we can deal with it, and for people who are going to lose their jobs, that it's difficult. But keep in mind where we're at. Business as usual can't continue. Those jobs will be lost if we don't do something in the basin and deal with the ecosystem decline that we've got. So we've got to do something now. We've got to do something before we get the big hits that potentially could happen in further droughts. So let's put the money on the table. Let's help the people who need the help now. Let's fix the environment, and let's actually help those communities. Trying to stop the tide coming in by saying let's keep business as usual is not going to work. It's not going to work for the people in terms of their jobs, and it's not going to work for the communities. So what I'm arguing, and I think that's what the authorities are arguing, is let's get water into the environment. Let's actually help those communities, and we can do that in a more effective way than as currently planned, and actually let's move forward. So I'm not trying to trivialize it. I'm just simply saying we've got to make a change, and let's make the change now, and let's do it with the money that we've got on the table. And that's the best way forward for everybody, including the communities.
Is this an example of environmentalists doing a better lobbying job?
Not at all. It's not about lobbying. It's not about the businesses in the community. It's not about environmentalists. It's really about science. It's really about looking at what we need in terms of the environment, in terms of flows, in terms of the assets. It's also looking at what we need to take into account in terms of the agricultural sector. Both of those things were taken into account in that guide document. They come up with a compromise, as far as I can judge, a compromise which takes us from a number of 3,000 to 4,000 gigalitres as recommended by the authority yesterday. That's a compromise because the top end number for the environment was 7,600 gigalitres. So if the environmentalists were the only ones being listened to, then we'd have 7,600 gigalitres extra water for the environment. That's not the case. The authorities recommended somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000. So they've already taken into account the socioeconomics. I would argue that we can do a better job in the sense that we can think about how we can actually reduce those potential losses in the communities.
All right, many thanks, Professor Quentin Grafton. Thanks so much for coming in.
You're more than welcome.